Obstruction of justice accusations, the central focus of today's hearing, with James Comey's claim that President Trump said to him, quote, I hope you can let this go over the Flynn investigation, leading to this key exchange today.
Do you know of any case where a person has been charged for obstruction of justice, or for that matter, any other criminal offense, where they said or thought they hoped for an outcome?
I don't know well enough to answer. And the reason I keep saying his words is I took it as a direction.
Right.
I mean, this is the President of the United States with me alone saying, I hope this. I took it as this is what he wants me to do. Now, I didn't obey that, but that's the way I took it.
You may have taken it as a direction, but that's not what he said.
Correct.
He said, I hope.
Those are exact words, okay. Correct.
You don't know of anyone that's ever been charged for hoping something. Is that a fair statement?
I don't, as I sit here.
So let me summarize. Director Comey could not say President Trump obstructed his investigation, therefore kind of a nothing burger. I'm going to bring Corey in here first. Corey, the Wall Street Journal had an op-ed today talking about this may be nothing more or less than Donald Trump, businessman in New York, and this is the way he operated here, and he was just a political neophyte at the time.
Look, Eric, I hope I get the winning lottery ticket tonight. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? And the bottom line is you can hope for a lot of things. The president didn't obstruct justice. There's no question about that. The one thing that has come out of today's testimony unequivocally was that Donald Trump, as a candidate and now as the president, has never been under FBI investigation. That is a headline that James Comey had to admit to today.
Now, one of the other things that we heard today in the aftermath of that testimony, Ebony, is that Harvard professor and constitutional law scholar Alan Dershowitz said, you know what? Comey himself said it. There's no obstruction of justice here, and Comey's 100% correct.
Well, really what Comey said, and this is true, is that it's not up to him to decide whether or not there was an obstruction of justice charge. That is a legal conclusion, right, that ultimately Robert Mueller, the new special counsel appointed, will have to ultimately decide. But I agree with Corey. I mean, and Comey said a lot of the leaks have just been flat out wrong, and that he had assured the president, and he'd maintained the entire time, that President Trump personally was not under investigation. But as far as obstruction, Eric, you know, I've said the entire time, we don't know if there's anything there, but I certainly don't see any evidence to get us there so far.
Kat, do you think the left, the Democrats, the left-wing media were disappointed in what they heard today?
I think so, but I think they've also been doing a very good job of hearing what they want to hear, which all people who are partisan are guilty of to an extent. Whatever they want to hear is what they'll take from something. But it really is a denial of acknowledging how high the standard has to be of proof for obstruction of justice. You have to be able to show intent. That's really, really tough, especially when you take into account the president can say stop this investigation if he wants to, any investigation. He can pardon anybody he wants to. He might have done something inappropriate, but to say that doesn't mean it's a high crime and misdemeanor. That's really, really hard to prove.
Marianne, what struck me throughout this testimony was that James Comey, I was losing credibility in him. I thought I always had held him on a high standard. You know, when he talked about the investigations in all 50 states, over 1,000 investigations as FBI director. And then I saw some of these things that seemed very, very political to me, not investigative or FBI, raised to the level of an FBI director.
I think what you have to look at here is, first of all, everything James Comey said today was under oath, under the pains and penalties of perjury, number one. Number two, the one thing you can't quibble about with Comey is the facts. He finds them, he pursues them. On judgment and performance, sure, we all have a lot of issues. There's no perfect witness. But what Comey said today repeatedly under oath is that Donald Trump lied repeatedly. And one of those lies was when he publicly said he never asked for anything about Flynn to Comey, and that was clearly a lie.
We're going to get to that soundbite in a second, but another enormous piece of news to come out of today's hearing, how Bill Clinton's infamous tarmac meeting with Loretta Lynch impacted Comey's decision to publicly announce the conclusion to the Hillary Clinton email probe. Listen.
In a ultimately conclusive way, that was the thing that capped it for me, that I had to do something separately to protect the credibility of the investigation, which meant both the FBI and the Justice Department. At one point, the Attorney General had directed me not to call it an investigation, but instead to call it a matter, which confused me and concerned me.
So understand what you just heard. The Attorney General under President Obama, Loretta Lynch, instructed the FBI director to lie by renaming his ongoing investigation and call it a matter. And coincidentally or not, that's the same directive coming from the Clinton campaign. So Marianne, there's your collusion, not between Donald Trump and the Russians, but between the President of the United States, Obama, his Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, and the FBI Director, Comey.
So we've known about that meeting on the tarmac for many, many months now, and that's why Loretta Lynch recused herself, and actually recused herself, unlike Jeff Sessions.
We didn't know she directed Comey to rename his investigation a matter. And by the way, that lines up perfectly with what Hillary Clinton told her campaign to call it.
That has been reported. I've read that elsewhere, that word matter had been used. I think if that's the standard here that we're applying,
this is the first time we heard that, that Loretta Lynch told FBI Director Comey to rename his investigation.
I can't find the citation for you, but I'm confident it's out there because I remember it. And the fact is, if that's the standard, then Admiral Rogers should have been held to that same standard when he took a personal day and went to Trump Tower while he was still in charge trying to get a better job.
Corey, all day long, this was blowing up on social media. I had never heard that Loretta Lynch, the AG, instructed the FBI director to rename an investigation a matter.
Well, I'd never heard either, but what also is troubling to me, if you look at what James Comey has said following his meetings with then President-elect Trump and now President Trump, is he felt the need immediately to write memorandums to himself to document these, but there was no need after the Attorney General instructed the FBI Director in unlawful order to change the direction of an investigation by not calling it an investigation. He had no reason to memorialize this in writing and alert somebody else, whether that was the White House counsel or somebody else, the Assistant Attorney General. He felt no obligation, no duty, no sense of honor that the Attorney General's asked him to change the way he talks about something. That's where the real problem is.
Now, really quick, Corey, I don't think that Loretta Lynch told him to stop the investigation or pivot the point. Now, the language, yes, that's what he said. She told me to use the term. She said, yes, keep going with the investigation, but don't call it that. That's exactly what he said.
In his testimony that he was very comfortable with her doing that.
No doubt about it. It was not a good day for Mrs. Loretta Lynch today, absolutely not. But she was not instructing him to pivot the investigation itself, only the way he talked about it, which is still problematic.
Right. And one quick thing. I mean, publicly, she recused herself. The whole nation, the entire world knew that she was no longer involved in this case and actually did what recused
Marianne, as a Democrat, does it not bother you slightly that it lines up perfectly with a campaign, with Hillary Clinton's campaign directive to not call the investigation an investigation? It sounds like collusion.
The semantics, that's not the looks of the lawyer. But the semantics, yes, I think that's bad, and I also think it was really bad that Bill Clinton even got on the plane.
Absolutely.
But here we are.
Kat, before we move to the next one.
Yes, of course that's bad, but I'm not going to take, look, as you said, Comey said a lot of negative things about Trump, and he also said a lot of things that make Trump look good. I think that the people who are against Trump are taking only the things from the memo, or from the hearing, excuse me, that make him look good, and the people that are for Trump take only the things that make, it's just people are picking and choosing what they want to hear. Either Comey is credible or he's not credible. This is just one person. There's going to be a lot more investigation into this, and we're going to have to wait and see what happens.
All right, yet another explosive revelation from today's hearing, how James Comey's memos got leaked to the New York Times. Listen to this.
The President tweeted on Friday, after I got fired, that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, because it didn't dawn on me originally, that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. And so I asked a close friend of mine to do it.
Is anyone else wildly concerned that our FBI director leaks important documents to the press? And it begs, Corey, it begs the question, what else did he leak?
Look, this is all part of the deep state, Eric, and this, I hate to say it, and I hate to be a conspiracy theorist,
Excuse me, if he's a private citizen when he leaks these, how is this a deep state?
This is directly related to his position as the director of the FBI in a capacity where he has information that other Americans don't have, and he's so concerned about leaking the information himself because he knows it's irresponsible and inappropriate to do, that he has to give it to a liberal college professor to make sure it gets to the New York Times himself. That's egregious, and for that matter alone, he should have been fired if he did it before that. And clearly, what we know, and what Marco Rubio asked him today was, how come the only information not coming out of the FBI that has not been leaked was that Donald Trump was never under investigation? And you know what Jim Comey's answer was? I don't know.
Kat, go ahead. But understand something, that at one point the New York Times and the Washington Post both called this some sort of smoking gun, this memo that we now know that James Comey, the day after or 2 days after he gets fired, leaks it to the New York Times.
Yeah, he did. He leaked it to the New York Times, and he did it for politically motivated reasons. All of that is obvious, but it's not, you can't point to a deep state theory of government officials leaking material. I'm not even saying one way or another what that's true, but if it's a private citizen leaking, then that, based on what words mean, is not the case.
Let's talk about leak, right? Because that's a legal term, and Eric and I talk about that every day on this show, and you do too, Kat. That's not what kind of leak we're talking about here. That's important to make clear.
True.
Right?
True.
Right. Okay.
But it begs the question, well, this is what we know about because he just told us. This is the first we heard.
Exactly why he
turned this over to a college professor they used to work with,
an advisor
and they gave it to the New York Times.
They gave it with the sole purpose of making sure a special
prosecutor. Are we supposed to think that this is the only time he's ever done something like this?
Eric, I mean, I don't want to speculate about what Jim Comey did or didn't do.
You're a lawyer.
Exactly. I am a lawyer, so I'm not going to speculate over it.
He's proven that he's willing to do that.
In this capacity of a private citizen, after he was no longer a government employee, he says that,
as a private citizen, why would he feel the need to have to give it
exactly
to...
why.
Because he didn't have access to the media? He's got 300 media people sitting outside his front door. He could have walked out and said, here are my memos. I'm a private citizen. I want to recant.
And then that's too politicized, right, Corey? If his goal is to get a special prosecutor, an independent special prosecutor on board, he can't, as Jim Comey, come out and ask for that.
I'm going to get to Mary in a second. But where was his demand for a special prosecutor when the Attorney General told him, look the other way on his email scandal?
He wanted one, Eric.
Let's move on. This is not an investigation.
No, he said that in his testimony.
Yeah, but he didn't leak it to the New York Times.
It would have made a lot less problems had Loretta Lynch put a special prosecutor on this thing, for sure.
If she put a special prosecutor, that special prosecutor would have led that investigation right to her front door, her own front door.
First of all, am I shocked anybody in Washington leaks anything? No, I am not. But what is really impressive is he admitted to it under oath. So he did that because, remember, Donald Trump threatened him and said, I have tape. You better hope I don't have tapes. And he said, you know what? I'm going to defend myself. I'm not only a private citizen. This guy's talked about these conversations in a network interviews. So I'm going to put this out there and protect myself. That's what he did. Trump threatened him. He punched him back.
Also, tapes doesn't seem like there's tapes.
And he punched him back with something. He punched him back with something that we're all agreeing on so far. There was nothing illegal about what all of this was all about. I mean, you yourself, Kat, you just said he can do what he wants to do. He's president. Not yet.
I think I'll point to the lawyer again. There's a long road to go on this.
All right, let's do this. Comey also delivered a blunt rebuttal to White House statements following his firing. Listen.
The administration then chose to defame me and, more importantly, the FBI by saying that the organization was in disarray, that it was poorly led, that the workforce had lost confidence in its leader. Those were lies, plain and simple.
Okay, I'll give you this one, Ebony. The left this is what they're latching on to. They didn't get collusion. They didn't get obstruction of justice. Well, they got the president-elect or president at the time may have lied to James Comey.
Yeah, so, I mean, Comey certainly calls him a liar, flat out. He says that's exactly why, even though with George W. Bush and with Barack Obama, for some reason, somehow, he felt the need to go immediately take these notes to possibly defend and redeem his own credibility at some point. He had the foresight, I guess, to do that. Look, you talked about the left, Eric, and yeah, maybe they feel some kind of way about Jim Comey today, but let's not pretend like the left is like in a love fest with Jim Comey. There was a lot, I think, if you want to say in terms of vindication of the president here, when, who was this senator? Risch asked specifically, was there ever the word used, you need to? He said that the word was simply hope. I think that's as close as to vindication as President Trump is going to get on this issue. When Jim Comey says under oath that he only used the word, I hope you can, that's not really an instruction.
Your thoughts, Corey, on the day that who won, who lost?
Look, it's very clear Jim Comey has lost all this credibility for a man who had been perceived in Washington as having the utmost integrity. What we've seen today is a person who not only is no longer able to lead the FBI, but the FBI is not in a spot where it should be, and that's why yesterday Donald Trump named a new FBI director, someone of impeccable qualities and character, and Jim Comey no longer is that individual, and that's why he was removed from office.
I don't think he's completely lost his credibility, because if you look at what the other side is saying, they're saying this was a terrible day for Donald Trump. Credibility is in the eyes of the beholder based on a set of predetermined narratives in almost every case, and particularly when it's come to the political environment these days.
Marianne.
Under oath, James Comey said that Donald Trump lied repeatedly, that James Comey lost his job because he investigated Russia, that Michael Flynn is in a lot more trouble regarding his relationships with Russia than many thought, and also he put Attorney General Sessions under a big spotlight today about his relationships with Russia. There's a lot there.
Okay, I'm going to leave it right there. But